Korea is largely a safe country. Guns and drugs are tightly controlled, and organized gangs are also relatively suppressed. As I mentioned in the episode about Korean nightlife, it is common that people work or play into late nights and end up going back home late. And people can do that without much fear about potential crime. But no society is perfect, and inevitably some of us would run into unfortunate situations. For today's episode, I collected stories about things happened to people on their way back home. From creepy molestation on the metro train, narrow escape from kidnapping, to plain weird encounter in the dark alley. None of them are paranormal, but as we all know, sometimes people are scarier than ghosts. So here are 6 allegedly true stories from Korea about scary things happened on the way back home. As always, handpicked, translated and narrated by your host, Anthony. I'm a man in my mid-20s, and just your typical 9-to-5 office worker. One day I was on my way home late after work dinner and drinks with colleagues. There was a girl, about 5 or 6-year-old, crying on the street. I decided to talk to her just in case she was lost or something. "Hi, where's your mom?" She didn't reply but kept crying. "Are you lost? Who are you with?" She just kept crying. I couldn't just leave her there, so I thought to take her to the nearby police station. "I'll take you to the police, okay? They'll call your mom." Not 10 meters had we moved in the direction to the police station, a 30-something looking woman ran up to us, crying where I was taking her. I assumed she must be the mother of the girl and started explaining that I thought the girl was lost and was about to bring her to the police. When suddenly the girl interrupted and said I had touched her, pointing her chest and groin area. I was too shocked and confused to respond at first. Then I guessed possibly somebody else might have done such a thing before I found her, and asked her if that was the case. But the girl just kept crying. The mother of the girl started yelling to the people around that I was a child molester and a pedo and somebody should call the police. I tried to protest, but I was so stunned with a totally unexpected situation unfolding, and all my words coming out were a series of stammer. People gathered around, started looking at me with disgust and contempt. Police officer came, and the girl repeated her claim that I touched her breast and groin. By then I started to figure out it must be all a setup to scam me, but nobody seemed to believe me. The police handcuffed me and was about to put me into the patrol car when a middle-aged woman approached and asked what was going on. When police explained that I was accused of child molestation, the woman said that she'd been watching what happened the whole time and the accusation was false. At that moment, the lady was my savior, guardian angel, and the light. She further explained that she ran a restaurant just across the street and had already seen the girl crying and me approaching her. She saw that I talked to the girl without touching anywhere and kept watching us as I took the girl's hand and walked her way, just in case the guy, I, might have had some bad intention. But then saw the girl's mother running over, and she returned to minding her own business, assuming it was all resolved now. Until she saw me, all tears and protesting, being handcuffed. I saw the girl's mother going pale for a short moment, but soon protested that the lady couldn't know it all. But the lady countered she'd willingly stand as witness, and the mother would have to face the legal consequence if she was intending to scam an innocent man. The mother was visibly shaken and murmured that she hadn't seen it happening herself and might let it pass as a goodwill gesture, etc. The police finally let me go. All I wanted at the time was just running away from the situation and the curious stares from the crowd, so I just thanked the lady many times and escaped. I still sweat just remembering all the disgusted looks of the people around me and the sense of helplessness in the trap. Maybe I should have counter-accused the mother and brought her to justice, but I'm honestly just glad that I escaped the ordeal. I may never help anybody in such a situation anymore. Any women who commute on the metro in rush hours would know those pervy guys who would rub their bodies on or even grope our buttocks. It has become almost a routine, like 1-2 times a week, and I'm not even shocked with such encounters anymore. But there's one singular encounter that I cannot easily brush off. I was on my way back home rather later than usual. The metro train was crowded but not packed, leaving enough personal spaces around. I was wearing a white dress, fitted but not skin tight. Suddenly I felt a bit of a stinging sensation on my buttocks area. I checked on the reflection on the window glass and saw a guy standing right behind me. He was just a plain-looking 20-something with glasses and a baseball cap. Just to make sure, I subtly moved away a couple of times, but every time the same guy, after taking some time to look around, came right up to my back again. Soon followed a tagging sensation on my buttocks, as if he was pulling my underwear, and light stinging sensation. Normally I would have just fended such a perv off with a low whisper of, "Do you want to go to jail, sir?" But this time I felt strangely creeped to actively react. I just jumped out of the train as soon as it arrived at my station. I was quite tired that evening, so I just went straight to bed without thinking about what had just happened. Following morning, Mom woke me up and asked, "Whatever happened yesterday, huh?" Still not quite up, I wasn't sure what she meant. Mom lifted my white dress up to me, and the dress was lacerated about the hip area with some sharp tool. To imagine that guy was cutting my dress, possibly with a razor blade, gives me a cold creep. I blame myself not having noticed what was happening, but then what might the guy have done had I reacted? The younger brother of my friend is 18, in his last year of high school. Typically so with most students of the year, he was on his way back home late after a long day in school. Dragging his tired feet slowly through the dark alley, he felt somebody watching him behind his back. He turned around and saw nobody. He just blamed his nerves and carried on. Coincidentally, the elevator of the apartment block was out of order. He sighed and took the stairs. After walking a few floors up, he noticed something strange. He should be the only one walking in the stairs, but he could hear another footstep ringing off-beat to his own. He looked down and saw the motion-detecting light was on about 2 floors below, a sign that somebody was following up. He started running up the stairs. To his horror, he heard the other footstep also sprinting up, so fast it was closing in quickly behind him. Reaching his floor in panic, he screamed, "Help!" as he ran down to his flat at the end of the corridor. What he heard were the neighbours on his floor chaining up and double-locking their front doors. Not just one, but many of them. He managed to safely lock himself in his place before being caught. But what really scared him was not the mystery follower, but his neighbours. Several years ago, after a wild party all night long, I hopped on a taxi back home about 7 in the morning, still very drunk. I must have reeked of booze then. The driver was a middle-aged man with his hair neatly combed, smartly dressed, and giving off a friendly vibe. So in my alcohol-infused sociable mood, I chatted with him carefree on the way, until I noticed that he wasn't taking the direction to my destination. He then said, "Let's have a look at the dam, shall we?" and drove towards Taechung Dam. He looked so nonchalant about it that for a moment I thought he was just joking. I told him that I should go back home and get some sleep, but he, ever so naturally, said he heard the dam was something to look at. He pulled the car off the road, bought bottles of soju from a convenient store, and joined me at the back seat and poured me a glass of drink, saying we should drink together. I was scared how he'd react if I should straight turn it down, so took the glass, saying I happily would. But I just wasn't used to drinking a straight soju without some side snacks. He bought my excuse and went back to the convenience store to buy snacks. Meanwhile, I locked up the doors and called the police. Finding out what I did, he turned violent, swearing and kicking the door. Fortunately, the police arrived quickly for once, and I was rescued unscathed. I avoid taxis to this day. This happened when I was a uni student. One evening I reunited with a friend. The evening that started at a pub ended at his place with extra soju and fried chicken. By the time I left him, it was 1 in the morning and I was pretty pissed. There was no bus anymore and I didn't feel like spending money on taxi, so decided to just walk home, which was about half an hour away on foot. There are 2 routes. One through busier and better lit street would take a bit longer, and the one through narrower back alley was more straightforward. I ought to usually choose the first at night, but this time the winter night was chilly and I just wanted to go back home and lay my tipsy self down as soon as possible. So I took the back alley. I must have been walking along the dark way for about 10 minutes. I heard footsteps running from behind me. From one end of the alley, somebody was running to my direction. I wondered who should be running at this time of the day. Did something happen? An emergency? It was too dark to make anything out, but as the person got closer, I could not shake off the strange feeling getting stronger that he or she was coming to get me. I knew it didn't make any sense, so as to prove to myself it didn't, I narrowed my eyes to see a bit better. The person seemed holding something in hand. Shoulder-length hair, but as the person got closer, I was convinced it was a man. And as he got even closer, I could finally make out the object in his hand. A knife. Why on earth should he be running with a knife so late at night? Finally, he got close enough for me to make out his face. His eyes were rolled back, and wide-opened mouth was dribbling. I finally turned around and started running myself. While my instinct was ringing the all-danger alarm, my reason was still trying to make a sense. What is this guy? Why the knife? Could he be really targeting me? What for? Series of questions made me look back despite of myself. The man had closed in and was now just 5 meters away from me, and I could clearly see those white eyes and dribbling mouth. There was a little hope that he might just run passing me had I stopped running, but instinct was telling me not to take the chance. I ran till I felt my heart popping out of my throat and could not run anymore. I looked back one more time. The man was now just in an arm's reach. Then I saw somebody ahead, and I renewed my sprint. I was going to cry help to the person, and then I should be saved. But next moment, chills crept up from my back and felt a strong grip on my shoulder. I was caught. The deathly fear totally overwhelmed me. Then, the creepy whisper in my ear.
I got you.
I screamed, and he ran past me, disappearing into the darkness. Hearing my scream, the other passerby came up and asked me if I was all right, but I could not say anything, as I couldn't understand what had just happened myself. I dragged myself back home, drenched with sweat and shivering, but could not sleep a blink all night. I still don't know who the son of a bitch was and why he did that to me. Winter 3 years ago. At the time, I lived in the company dormitory. To get there, I had to wait for a bus in front of Suwon train station. The bus was unfortunately a bit sparse, so it wasn't uncommon that I waited for it at the particular spot day to day. And one particularly cold day, somebody talked to me. At first I thought it was a man. The hair was short, and overall the frame and facial features suggested masculinity. It was only when I saw the bosom that I realized it was a woman. "You really have a gentle vibe," she said. Thank you," I said. It's not uncommon to come across a Taoist cult missionaries trying to propagate on the street, so I just assumed she was one of such. But she just casually asked me how old I was and if I worked for the company. It wasn't difficult to figure out because the stop was designated for my company shuttle bus only. "I just wanted to say hi because you have such a lovely vibe," she said, and went away. Pretty odd, but I just shrugged it off. After a month later, I had forgot all about it, and I was on my way back to the dormitory after visiting my parents for weekend. As usual, I was waiting for the shuttle in front of Swan Station when an old lady came up to me. "Excuse me, young lady. I'm freezing. Could you perhaps lend me your gloves?" Her clothes were absolutely inadequate for the cold December day. She barely wrapped herself with some tattered shawl over the thin shirt, and her skirt was equally thin. Her feet in rubber clogs weren't even wearing socks. On her back was a big backpack, and the hands holding 3 extra bundles had turned red with the cold. She looked so cold and miserable. "Where are you going, Granny, with all those heavy stuffs?" I said. "To see my son. I should see my son," she said. She carried on mumbling about her son, so I thought she might not be 100% herself. I'd been seeing my grandma suffering dementia, so I could not just pass her. So I offered to carry some of her bundles for her, which was surprisingly lighter than they initially seemed, and she led me to her destination through the back street full of bars and clubs. The old lady was surprisingly nimble despite her age and bent stature. The back street was still covered with snow from the previous night, and I was focusing so much not to sleep that I didn't realize I was led to eerie street with few passerbys and empty shops. I was a bit alarmed when I finally looked around, but I didn't suspect anything from the old lady and just followed her. She finally reached an old house. "You helped me so much. Let me thank you with a cup of tea," the old lady said. I said it was okay, but she pulled my sleeve into the house, set me down, and went into the kitchen. My uncomfortable hunch became suddenly a reality when I noticed a pair of eyes looking out behind the door on the other side. When my eyes met them, the crack-opened door closed. "I'll just go. I'm a bit late already," I said to the old lady standing up. She rushed out from the kitchen shouting, "Don't go! Have tea!" Her desperate tone scared me, and I started running to the door. But 2 people came in from the front door, blocking my way. I gasped when I realized one of them was the woman who chatted me up a month ago. The other was a man looking like in his 40s. The woman pushed me, saying, "What's the rush?" Meanwhile, the old woman too caught up with me and hung onto my arm. I insisted that I was late for my appointment and should go, but who'd have imagined how strong the frail-looking old lady really was? I realized there was no way I could fight 3 people to escape, so set myself down again. The old woman went back to the kitchen. The woman sat across me, while the man stood next to me, arms crossed. The woman said she was sorry if they scared me, they had no ill intentions, blah blah blah. But my focus was on the door across the room. It was crack-opened again. I could not see peeping eyes as earlier, but it was obvious somebody was watching it all. Meanwhile, the old woman brought out what looked like tea. She gave teacups to the other 2, while the paper cup to me. Now the woman cracked on with the typical Taoist cult stuffs, how the universe was formed, how the energy and karma work, blah blah blah. She didn't forget to ask me to have the tea, that it was a healthy herbal brew in between, and I just pretended to sip it. All the while, the old woman went back to the kitchen, and the man sat himself down and was reading a book. This was my only chance, I thought. I kicked the woman's chest and threw the teacup at the man's face. I rushed to the front gate, but it was locked. I ran around the garden and found some stuffs piled against the wall. I used it as a step to crawl up the garden wall. My heart dropped to see the man chasing after me. He crawled the wall up after me, so I picked up the stone and crushed his hand holding over the wall. As I ran down, I also heard the gate opening behind me. Now others should be after me too. I'm not athletic at all, hadn't properly exercised at that point since I graduated high school, so I just jumped into the first building I saw around the corner. As I was running up the stairs, I peeped out through the window. The man was running around, and the woman was checking in the building on the opposite side. But when they found the door to the building locked, they both entered the building I was hiding in. I went up the stairs as quietly as possible. Soon I reached the door to the rooftop. The old metal door would definitely make lots of noises if I tried to open it. And what could I do from the rooftop anyway? Jump down? It was then when I saw a number of plastic barrels at the corner. I jumped into the biggest one of them. I also picked up a plastic bucket and put it over my head before closing the top of the barrel over me. The barrel must have been used to store kimchi or something like that. The smell inside was suffocating, but I did not dare to even breathe anyway in the pitch dark inside. Then I heard footsteps approaching. Then a loud cracking noise, which must have been the door to the rooftop, and then the same creaking noise, this time closing it. Were they gone? Could I go out now? And just then, the top of the barrel was lifted. I could have just fainted, but the top closed again a second later. They must have thought the barrel was full because of the bucket I had put over my head. I could hear them checking other barrels and then going down the stairs. Total silence fell around me, but I could not conjure the courage to step out. Only then I realized that I had the mobile with me. I sent a message to the emergency, fearing to make any noise. And police came to find me after 20 minutes, though for me it felt like hours in the barrel. The faces of the police when they saw me popping out from the barrel. I didn't realize then, but my feet were bloody and swollen, having run barefooted earlier. I heard the perpetrators were caught a couple of weeks later. They were not even just a cult. They lured people in, feigning a religious propagation, hooked them up with psychoactive drug, and leached them of their money once they got addicted. What really creeped me out was they'd been watching me for a month since the initial chat-up. They knew exactly when to find me and used the old woman to lure me in. I'm still on therapy and could not even dare to get anywhere near Swan Station. Hi, it's Anthony here, and thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed today's stories. It was another real or non-paranormal episode, but reality can be just as spooky and weird as any ghost story. I'm not usually out and about late nights, but fortunately I haven't had any such scary situations so far. Well, touch wood. What about you? Have you ever had any weird and scary encounters as in today's stories? Do let us know in the comment if you have. If you enjoyed my work, give it a like and a comment, and please consider subscribing to my channel. If you'd consider more direct support, I also have Buy Me a Coffee account. The link is in the description. I always appreciate your support regardless of which way. Thank you. I'll come back with something different next week. Stay safe and take care.